Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson.
And I'm Alex Hogue.
And you're listening to Diesel Performance Podcast. Guys, we got on a returning guest today. We're going to be talking with Jaden from Duramaxtuner, one of our lead technicians and sled pull expert. For now, I want to give a quick shout out to all of our sponsors. Of course, we love working with XDP. They're their one-stop shop for power and performance. Located up there in New Jersey, but they service all of the internet. You can pretty much anything you need for your truck, you'll be able to find over at XDP. Of course, we've also been working with WC Fab since the inception of Duramaxtuner. We love talking with Jason and Ryan and all of the crew over at Worley Custom Fabrication and Worley Custom Powder Coating. The reason we love their products is because they work and they fit. And that sounds like two really simple things to ask for, but once you start getting into intakes and intercooler pipes and all of the other cool stuff that they do, those can be real hard questions to answer and have it be accurate. But you can trust that you're going to get a premium product and a premium service every time you work with WC Fab. And speaking of premium, you don't get better in the high-pressure common rail fuel injection game than you do with Exergy. They are the leaders. That's what the guys who win UCC run. That's what we run. That's what our customers run. And that consistency, that quality control that they have, that absolute consistency for premium quality, that is why everybody loves Exergy Performance. So if you are looking for something, check them out. Also, they've gotten into the fuel additive game. If you haven't listened, go back and listen to our snake oil or science episode with Randy Harkema, one of the owners of Exergy. Did a great job breaking out why their fuel additive is real science and not just snake oil to throw in your fuel tank. But for today, we got Jaden. Jaden, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. How about you?
Doing good, man. Jaden, I don't think we've gotten you on the show since last year when we were talking about sled pulling, if memory serves correctly.
It was 2 years ago.
2 years ago. Wow.
Yeah,
memory did not serve
Time
correctly.
flies.
The LB7 pulling.
The LB7 pulling, that's right. And what did you go out in this year?
We got the 17 F350 Powerstroke out this year.
Ooh.
Same as last year, but
my favorite regular cab in the fleet.
Mine too.
I like it better. God, I don't know if I can say this out loud. I like driving it like any distance better than the Apache. So our boss has a 58 Apache on an LB7. It's nasty. It's an awesome truck. It's beautiful to look at, but fun to drive compared to that Powerstroke. Oh, man, I hate it. It hurts to say it, but it's true.
it's hard to beat the comforts of the Powerstrokes, man.
It really is.
I mean, they all got their perks, but something about the Powerstroke, I'm a big fan.
Now, this Powerstroke is not a sled pull exclusive truck. Alex, have you gotten a chance to drive that truck?
I have not yet. It's one of the ones on my list here. As you know, we've got a fleet over at Duramaxtuner, so it's up there, but we just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, it's a cool truck. Jaden, can you give us a rundown of what's been modified on that truck from stock? Because it looks fairly close to factory from the outside.
Yeah, so it was actually my first project here at Duramaxtuner when I started. So it's got the full Carly suspension with the 4-inch lift, leveling, all that. We got the S&B intake, our Stealth 67 turbo on it, and it just got a built transport in it.
There you go, finally.
Oh, and WC Fab traction bars.
Absolutely.
It's the little things.
So it's a leveling kit, is that right? Or is there like a 2-inch lift on it? It's just a little bit up in the air from a stock one.
Yeah, I think Harley calls it like a 2-inch leveling kit. So it does raise it 2 inches, but I think it's 2 in the rear and like 3 in the front to compensate.
Gotcha.
But it's supposed to be like the major solution to the death wobble that those trucks have from the factory.
Which it had. That truck we bought sight unseen out of a state away. It was 5-6 hours. It was the middle of COVID. Everything is on lockdown. Nick over at Duramaxtuner, our boss, decided he wanted one of these trucks. We literally bought it over the phone and negotiated them delivering it, like whatever it was, 4 to 6 hours away from us, and dropped it off. The first time somebody jumped in it, our producer here on the podcast, also our media guy over at Duramaxtuner, Justin Tyson, grabbed the camera, jumped in the front seat with Nick. They drove down the road. Justin reported back. It was the scariest single moment of his life at Duramaxtuner. The wheel was shaking so violently and so hard that he literally thought the steering wheel was going to fly off the column and come across the cab.
I remember seeing the video of it. It did look pretty aggressive.
Yeah. It was a wild clip. We'll see if we can maybe post a link to that in the show notes. Take a look, guys. We'll see if we can figure out the technology end to post a link. So, now, Alex, I'll tell you, this truck, the way that it's set up with all of the emissions equipment still intact is, I think, what makes it fairly unique. Would you say that's true, Jaden?
Oh, yeah. I mean, other than a couple guys last year that we ran into that just happened to be like, taking my truck out for a pull to see what it can do. I mean, we were the only emissions compliant truck that was there specifically to sled pull.
Yeah. So we took that truck out last year. I think we put out $1,000 bounty for 3 pulls. So if you went to 3 pulls, your total distance was more than ours. We give you $1,000 cash. We were the only ones to show up to 3 pulls with an emissions equipped truck. So the market's not there yet. The competitors, I don't think we got enough people who are out there that want to compete with their emissions-equipped truck. I get it. I understand. We wanted to see if there's any other crazy people like us out there, but, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think we had 2 bites out of all that whole bounty, and it was one at one event and one at another. So nobody actually made all 3.
Yeah. But that's fine. That's fine. Maybe in the future, listeners, if you think you got an emissions-equipped truck or you want to put an emissions-equipped performance truck together, get a hold of us over at Fans of Diesel Performance Podcast Facebook group, and we'll put you in touch with the right people and see what we can do. Now, Alex, have you been to sled pulls before? Is this kind of a new sport for you?
It's relatively new for me. I mean, we got to watch a couple at UCC this year, which was a ton of fun, seeing who was bringing to the table. Again, too, being down in the Indianapolis area, a lot of Cummins guys doing that as well. But overall, I think that's really my first pull other than, 15 minutes back and forth at a county fair.
Man, I don't know. The UCC being your first sled pull might be like banging a supermodel to lose your virginity to.
Pretty much.
It's just hard to come back and find something that's going to be better than that later,
Yeah.
But sled pulls, I would say, the local fair sled pulls that Jaden's going to, there's a really cool vibe at them. Can you talk a little bit about showing up to, I believe you're at the Kane County Fair over there in St. Charles, Illinois?
Yeah, so it was last week we did the first pull of our season. I mean, the season's been going, but the first one we showed up to was Kane County down in St. Charles. So, real small track over there. I mean, you're talking 300 feet, and you're in the barriers.
Yeah, and it is. It runs into a fence. Like there's a dirt mound and then a fence, and then people are walking in. It's like the entrance gate on the other side of this little fence.
Well, this year they actually threw extra safety precautions. They put water-filled plastic barriers in front of the dirt mound, so you'll hit those first.
Nice. Okay. Slow you down a little.
Yeah.
Slow you down a little. I like it. All right.
Unfortunately, the area got a lot of rain the week going into it, so the track was in real rough shape. I mean, you're talking about barely packed dirt on the ground, but.
What is the impact of barely packed dirt? So when you say it's really loose.
Yeah,
it's a really loose track.
Yeah, you can skid your foot around the ground and put a rut in it with just your shoe.
Okay, and why is that a problem for sled pulling?
Just traction. I mean, the softer the dirt with the weight behind you when you come out of the hole, the softer the dirt, the more likely your tires are going to spin underneath you. And sled pulling spinning is not winning.
There you go. That's the truth of it. Now coming in, how many people were in? Because you're in the work stock class.
Yeah.
So how many other trucks entered the work stock class?
Yeah, for 8,000 stock diesel, I believe it was 12 total.
Wow.
That's a pretty good number.
Yeah.
For stock gas, there was 1. So.
Yeah. Stock gas, I can't think of many stock gas guys out there pulling, so I love to hear that. But okay, so stock diesel, 8,000-pound stock diesel. So that means that your truck, you can't put weight on your truck to weigh more than 8,000 pounds. Now, older trucks weighed under 8,000 pounds with like a 4-door short bed, which is like your most common setup.
Yeah.
They would weigh under 8,000 pounds. So have I seen guys who have weights in the passenger seat or down on the floorboards? Yeah, it happens. Are there guys who put weight bars in the bed as far forward in the bed as you can because you want the weight on the front of the truck to hold the front of the truck down? Yeah, there's a lot of guys who did that. We've done that with an LML build we used to have here at the shop. But the Ford doesn't have any of that. Have you scaled the Ford? What does the Ford come in at as a regular cab long bed? She can't be 8,000 pounds.
So it was really weird last year because the scales were really inconsistent. We went up because with the LB7, we ran, I think, 800 or 900 pounds of weight in the bed just because it was a crew cab short bed, but even with a capper on it, the thing only weighed maybe 7,250.
Yeah.
It was a real light truck. So we figured single cab Ford, probably got to be lighter than that, right? Aluminum body.
Yeah.
So last year going into Kane County, same thing, first event of the year, we threw the weight box in there with the same weight as the LB7. We're like, there's no way it's going to be over, right? Hit the scale, and we're at like 8,600 pounds. And I'm like, how is that possible? So we got off the scale, ran back to the truck, started throwing weights off as fast as we could because, I mean, the event's about to start. Took all the weight out of the truck. Thing's bone empty. I get up there, and I'm 8,150.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, this just doesn't make sense. And then the following event at McHenry County, I scaled up, and I was at 7,850. And now that seems to be the pretty close number. Most of the scales have been right around there. So I'm guessing I'm right about 7,800, 7,850. But
it's so crazy how much heavier a newer truck is, a 2019 is, compared to a 2001 or 2004, whatever that LB7 was. I forget.
And supposedly the body's lighter.
Yeah, well, the body's lighter, but I think if you were to look at the two frames next to each other,
oh yeah, big difference.
Yeah, it's night and day.
They're totally different vehicles. I think the first time I really had my eyes open to this is when they were doing the Apache build, which I had nothing to do with. I called the guy on Craigslist and helped buy a truck, and that was the end of my participation in the Apache. But yeah, it was really wild when they pulled a 57 frame and set it next to the LB7 frame.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, oh, this one was made with duct tape and baling wire, and this one is a frame. They looked like they weren't even the two vehicles, right?
Yeah, those old 50s frames, there's not much to them.
Yeah, exactly. So it was pretty wild to see. So it is, and they seem to be getting heavier and heavier and more equipment that goes into them and things like that. The emissions equipment, yeah, there's weight in the emissions equipment.
Yeah.
I don't think there's 1,000 pounds of weight in the emissions equipment, but there's weight in the emissions equipment.
Oh, yeah, definitely a couple hundred pounds there.
So yeah, okay. So you get weighed in. What are the other pullers like? Do you get a chance to talk to the other pullers? Do you get a chance to kind of hang out with the people who are in the work stock class?
Yeah, usually I do. Like this time was because King County always generally they make the stock diesel guys go last, so I'm kind of hanging out all night, and I have plenty of time to meet, mingle and talk to people. But Kane always does it first, so it was like right when I got there, I just got the truck unloaded, threw my axle stops in, aired down the front tires, and then it was like time to go to the line.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this event specifically, I didn't have a chance to really talk to too many people, but usually, yeah, I'll usually go around, see what guys are running, kind of see how the season's been going, if anybody. Anything cool has happened. Yeah.
I always think that's probably the most. It's one of the sports where you really have the most amount of support amongst your competitors. Drag racers, I'll hear this a lot too. I think a lot of drag racers are used to this. Where if you're in, especially that entry level class, everybody's really friendly. Everybody wants to help. The guys who are in the upper classes who have a lot of experience, they're willing to help. The guys who are in the middle, they're nice to you. It's it's a really, really easy one to enter. I will say the biggest frustration I always have going to a sled pull as opposed to going to drag racing is the instructions of what to do and where to be and at what
100%.
time is generally organized chaos at best.
Or just non-existent.
Yes. So we have had polls where we walked around for 30 or 40 minutes trying to find where the sign-up is. Because you're at a county fair in the middle of Wisconsin, and you don't know the sled pull group, and you don't know any organizers, and you saw they were having a sled pull, and you show up, and there's they don't put up big signs, and it's a very local community that might take a minute or two to kind of crack into.
Yeah.
Drag racing, generally somebody is on the speaker talking the entire time you are there, and they generally, if you can just hone in and listen to that loudspeaker for about 10 minutes, you probably will hear everything they had to say for the day.
Well, nice things are drag strips are, purpose built. So the only things going on there is drag racing, whereas most of these are at the county fairgrounds in their arena or whatever. So, it's not a sled pull going on there every weekend. They kind of built to whatever event's going on. So it's not like a drag strip where those arrows clearly show you to the staging lane and all that. These are clearly the staging lanes.
Yeah.
Sled pulling, it's just go by that guy over there.
You're lucky if they do an announcement over the grandstand to be and the sled pull meeting is now taking place at behind the porta potties. And yeah, I've heard that.
With the fair audio, it's more like, you're what did that guy just say? No, I don't know.
That's happened so many times. So, but that's okay. I think it takes that passion to get into sled pulling and go out and have fun at 25 or 30 miles an hour, which is always my jab at sled pulling. Jaden, you've been doing it for a while now here at the company. Did you ever sled pull before you started here?
No, the LB7 was the first crack at it. I mean, I grew up in this area, so going to county fairs is something I did since a kid. So I've always been aware of sled pulling. I used to always watch it. I was big into watching the tractor pulls growing up. But yeah, so I knew what it was about, but definitely being behind the wheel is a whole different experience than being a spectator.
I remember seeing the tractor pulls as a kid and not getting it.
Yeah.
Like I was like, these are really cool kind of tractor-ish things, right? Because they have 2 engines and 4 engines and crazy shit like that. And then some of them looked like, you could have saw them in the field on the way there. So you're like never quite sure. So I remember doing it, but I just never remember understanding the mechanics of it. And then when I got around here more and I started getting around diesel performance, and like learning the way that the weight box moves and how it's timed to move and how much weight is in the weight box on the sled. And then, like, different sleds have different results, and some are more aggressive and some aren't.
Yeah.
And there's all these variables where it is very much a DIY hobbyist community. It's not, like, even National Truck Pullers Association, like, ISP, the club we pull with, it's a club name. Like, honestly, like, it's not federally regulated, you know what I mean? There's no, like, actual professionals who do this just this for a living. So it is something that takes you gotta have a lot of fucks to give about very little, because even winning, especially in the entry level class, the work stock class, what does the winner get at a pull?
Depending on
40,
how many
$60,
entrants,
$100.
Yeah, maybe around 100. And if there's a big class, you'll get a bit more. But yeah, I mean, 100's a good day if you walk home with that.
It's a really good day.
So it pays for your fuel and.
You hope?
Yeah, maybe fuel and a couple corn dogs.
At $3.50 a gallon, $4 a gallon for diesel, like depending on how far you have to drive to some of these, because the club we pull with is from really kind of focused more in like central, like further south than us. I think is definitely where they're centralized.
Yeah, kind of like the Paw Paw, Mendota, Pontiac area, all there.
Yeah, so not quite central Illinois, maybe the north end of central Illinois. That's probably what I would call them. But it's not like just because they're the ISP, they're not like they don't go down and pull in southern Illinois.
No.
Like we're about as far north as they go. So it's always pretty interesting to see. All right, so you get up to the line. What order did you pull? Did you pull early in the pack or end of the pack?
Yeah, I was actually the second pull for diesel stock. Third of the night because the one gas truck, they went before us. But yeah, and I was the second 8,000 stock diesel.
Nice. Okay, now the guy before you, when you don't get to see a lot, man, you're at the top of the class.
Oh,
That's where I always get nervous. I always would prefer, because sometimes they say tracks go away. So sometimes tracks, obviously, as you go through it more and more and more, you can dig roots into it. And then if they don't have the equipment to really maintain it, if the dirt's not right to maintain the track, or if they just don't know what the fuck they're doing, we've seen all of these.
Yeah.
Sometimes the track gets worse as the night goes on. So going late in the order means, well, this track could be damn near ruined by the time I get to it. But if you go first, you don't have a lot of time to scope out the track. So you don't have a lot of time to see, well, what's the lane the other guys are going in? Because sometimes kind of all of the drivers will pick like, oh, I'm going to veer left at the end, or I'm going to veer right at the end. And you might get a little bit more traction there. It might be a little bit more downhill there. So, like there's some sort of alleged advantage. I think a lot of this is snake oil, but it feels like there's an advantage to knowing those things. How do you look at it?
Oh, I definitely feel like there is. Especially getting the chance to watch a few hooks ahead of you, kind of see how they're doing, how they're leaving the line. Are they blowing the tires off right away? Are they actually, hooking up? Which is funny because this one was kind of the opposite. It seemed like the track got better as the night went on because it seemed like most of the topsoil there was really loose. So as that kind of got beat up and then they constantly pack it down after each run, it seemed like people were hooking up a little bit better. Whereas by the time I went, I blew the tires right off it. And, of course, like you said, I didn't have any time to really scope out how the track was looking. I'm third guy in the line, and I'm trying a whole different launch strategy this time. I'm trying to start in a higher gear and just trying to see what I can do with the truck to get a little bit more out of it. And then, of course, the track is in not optimal condition. So it's like, oh, now I got to scrap my whole plan. And
what gear did you start in?
I went for a third gear start this time. Yeah, so we're trying to get a couple more feet out of her, and it took it well, but that's probably part of the reason why I lost traction right out of the hole, because pretty aggressive gear ratio and and loose soil on top.
Yeah.
Was there a specific strategy for being in that third gear this time around, or
what would the benefit have been if you did it right?
Just you you get more wheel speed, or ground speed, I should say, not wheel speed. Wheel speed's gonna hurt you, but yeah, the goal is to get as much ground speed as I can, as fast as I can, because like you said, the weight box comes up as the sled goes down the track. So the fastest you can get going, the quickest is the best, because as you go down the track, it's just getting heavier and heavier. So if you can get a lot of ground speed out of the hole, you'll carry that inertia through.
And on this particular pole, how much were you carrying behind you?
I'm not 100% sure what it is, because I think they kind of adjust the weight accordingly, and I think they weighted it down a little bit heavier because of how short the track was.
Yeah, so the weight in the weight box, what a great question, Alex. So the weight in the weight box is always a mystery. They'll never announce it. Not that I've ever seen anyways. Maybe somebody knows it, but I've never heard them announce how much weight they put in there. So what they will generally do is have somebody come out and run a test hook, or they offer you could drop. So if you're the first hook, you get the choice to keep it or drop it. And if you drop it means you're going to drop this number. You're going to go back to the end of the pack. So if you're first, there's a lot of decisions to make to figure out, okay, was this the best hook I could possibly make? Is the track going to get worse? Is the track going to get better? There's all those questions that swirl around when you're first and you have the choice to turn it down or drop it.
You got about 10 seconds to make that choice.
Yeah,
the guy walks up to you at the window. He's like, you want it or you not?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yep.
And then the guy beats you by a foot, and you're like, well, I should have turned it down.
That's often, too, is I don't know how many rehooks really pay off. Sled pulling, you also, you don't get a practice hook. Nope. Generally, if they run a test hook, if somebody goes out and does a test hook, a lot of times what I've seen is maybe somebody who's not necessarily in that class tonight.
Yeah.
So they might pull a stock truck off the side, or one of the organizers might have a truck or something like that. So sometimes they'll come out and they'll have that. Sometimes they have one of the guys in the class come out and run a test hook. And then go back and get in the line. But it's usually your first guy in line. He is the test hook. They run it. Now, what that does is your operators generally have an idea of, they can look at the track, they can look at their machine, they look at the trucks, and they have an idea of how much weight they should put in there. But it's not like something you plug into a formula, and okay, here's how much weight I have. They don't. It's not. There's too many variables for that to be accurate.
There's just too much math for the presenters, the promoters.
A little bit. I think a little bit of both. There's a reality here that, how do I mathematically describe how wet the dirt is? It's there's a number to do that, but am I going to bring that test equipment to have that number? It's if you gathered every detail, I'm sure you could, but it's not practical. It's not realistic. So what you have to do is have a little bit of experience, a little bit of gut, and then you have to test it. So they'll let you run out, and what they want to see is, they don't want to really see anybody go past 300 feet.
Yeah, I was just going to say, they seem to aim for about that 300-foot mark.
300 foot. I don't know if this is insurance related, if this is culture related. I don't know if this is just brakes. You got to remember, you're not only running a truck 300 feet. That's some of these trucks, especially at the bigger stuff, make 1,000+ horsepower. But they now have a giant trailer with a huge weight and a giant plow on the front of it that they're dragging behind them. So if that chain breaks, or if their hitch breaks, and that truck runs away, which we've seen guys who panic and don't know how to hit the brakes, or panic and just can't hit the brakes, or panic and they hit the brakes, but there's so much momentum going and so much torque that once they get moving, to get that truck to stop again could be really dangerous.
Well, it goes against your instinct too, because you're like, I mean, at least I do. I beat it into my head, do not touch that brake pedal, because if you hit the brakes mid sled hook, that sled's going to slam into the back of you, and it's going to hit you hard.
That's right. Yeah. So that's a great point,
so
too.
You got to almost throw away what you forced yourself to think. Oh shit, chain go. Now I got to hit the brakes actually.
Yeah, which is very hard to do
in a split second.
So some fields we've been to, there's a floating finish. That's generally if they have a lot of runway after 300 feet. Then they'll say it's a floating finish, 300 feet's a full pull. Floating finish means whoever goes the furthest tonight, we're going to let them run out until they stop. That's going to be the winner. There's other tracks that if you're at a shorter track and there's limitations, they have to put up barrels, there's walkways, there's other shit going on. They may say full pulls come back around and they'll do a pull-off at the end. And then they increase the weight to do the pull-off. Because if they keep adding weight, eventually people won't be able to make 300 feet. Or I've seen 250-foot tracks, right? So it's there's ways to kind of work through it depending on what your situation is.
I mean, those sleds can stop about anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they fully weight up that box. I mean, I'm pretty sure it'll stop a tank.
It's essentially a big plow that's being drug in the ground behind you. So literally like a snow plow being welded to a trailer that's behind you that you're pulling, and it's just dragging into the ground deeper and further the further you pull it, and then there's tons of weight on top of it. Like, yeah, they're designed to stop you. That's what they're there for.
And I think about 3/4 up the rails, the box hits a switch, and it pushes 2 hydraulic rams out the back of the pan, and it picks the whole back of the truck up too. So then it's just a pan in the dirt. There's no wheels or nothing touching the ground. If you watch the sled, when it gets to that point, you'll see the back wheels spinning.
Yep.
Because, it's literally nothing but weight into a pan with giant plows in it and the clay dirt.
That's it. So it's a brutal sport on your truck. There's a reason if you were to run a 500 feet of that, you're talking about low speed, high stress on engines, which is a great way to blow something up. That's just a great way to overheat something. So I always joke about sled pullers. It's the most fun you could have under 30 miles an hour. It's the most glorious you could feel in 20 seconds. It's a pretty quick experience, and unfortunately, it's not, like I said before, it's not something you get to drag racing. You could go out and fuck around on a test and tune day or a diesel day at a drag strip. You could make 10, 20, 30 passes in a night. Sled pulling, you could go sit around for 6 hours and get one pull.
And that's generally what you do.
Most pulls, especially for work stock class, that is what you get. And it won't be until next week at best until you can pull again. So it's like you can't practice this every day. I think that's why some guys take years to really get good at doing this and really hone in that expertise and that skill, and then what to do with that expertise and that skill is a whole nother thing to learn.
I think I was telling Ben that with the pull after I'd hooked, and I was like, man, it'd be a whole different sport if you can get a practice hook in. Then I would have known the track is the way it was. I could have changed my whole strategy, but I'm literally out there moving by the time I'm making these adjustments. It's like, oh, no. Tires blown off, wheels going crazy. He's like, all right, got to back off. Do I stop at the 100 foot and go for a rehook, or do I stay in it?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to make all these decisions in a second, and your adrenaline is through the roof.
That's right.
I was telling Ben also, I was like, man, you'll never find anything that'll spike your adrenaline more for just 30 seconds.
So, but in addition to that here, where in the lineup did you finish?
I believe it was 4th.
So that's still pretty good out of 12.
Yeah. Yeah, I did 256, and I believe the winner was 266.
10 feet. Now, here's the other question, especially the work stock class we run in this. Our club, the club we pull with, does not spec the work stock class. You're not actually a sanctioned class.
Correct.
The work stock class is put on by the local promoters, and ISP facilitates it.
Yeah.
So it's not their class, so they don't spec it. That means that there's no tech. That means nobody comes out and measures your turbo and verifies that your truck doesn't have nitrous on it or, a jet thruster or whatever nonsense people are putting out there to get past something.
I mean, I checked my own weight at St. Charles.
Yeah, you're not even required to weigh in. That's what we found is like there's no verification. It's like, this is the hobby class. Come on in and be a hobbyist. Generally, we find at least one truck at every work stock pull that very clearly violates all of the rules, but it's still out there pulling with us. We have never called foul. We're there to have fun. If we win, great. Yeah. We're really proud of that. If we lose to that guy, we're only a little bit salty, but we could take that on the chin. We know what we're doing. We know what the class should be. We know what competitors we beat and what they had, and we're proud of that.
I mean, it's easy to accept a loss when the guy's got 200-300 horsepower over you. It's like, well, he should have beat me.
Yeah. I'd be really fucking pissed at whoever built your truck.
He should have beat me by more.
Right. That's usually my thought. I'm like, you only got 4 feet on me, huh? But okay. But that's sled pulling is there's an old rule, and I'm not saying that's what happened in St. Charles. If you're not cheating, you're not winning, and that's generally true to some extent in sled pulling.
Yeah,
it's just kind of an accepted fact. It's more about who could be slicker and use that to their advantage, because we have seen trucks with 200-300 horsepower more than everybody else in the class end up in last place. So there's you still have to have some experience and some knowledge to be able to apply whatever advantage you give yourself.
I don't remember which truck it was, because we were back filming something at the truck, but someone made a pull right at the end of the work stock class, and I mean, I couldn't see the truck, but I could see the smoke stack, and it looked like a locomotive going down the thing, and you could just hear it. And I remember Justin looked over at me, he's like, "That thing wasn't stock." It's like, yeah, well, it is what it is.
That's okay too. I've also been with the company when we entered a work stock sled pull with a twin turbo 5.9.
Yeah, I need to do that again.
Which it did have the factory turbo on the truck.
Yeah.
So if that
It counts.
kind of count. Don't worry about the S480 that was bolted to the front of that turbo, but it had a stock turbo on there, so
yeah.
kind of cool. All right, guys. Well, Jaden, thank you so much for joining us and talking about it. Where's the next pull you're going to be at?
Next one will be, I believe it's August 6th for McHenry County Fair in Woodstock, right here in our hometown.
Nice.
And then shortly after that, I think 2 or 3 days after that, is Boone County Fair out in Belvedere, Illinois.
If you are in the northern Illinois area, McHenry County, Boone County, King County area, check out the fairs. Come check out the pulls. Jaden will be there. You can come admire his sled pull expertise anytime you want.
That's also the last 2 events of our shootout.
That's it. Yep. Stealth Series shootout. Going to be a big one. I think pretty standard. We're giving away a cooler. Who knows what else we'll show up with this year. Yep. So for today, this has been Paul Wilson.
And I'm Alex Hogue.
Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for joining us today, guys. This has been Paul Wilson.
And Chris Emke.
Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
What?
Is this
You're
close
good.
enough? All right.
Yeah, should be fine.
Thank you for the end of the episode clip.
Oh, shit.